morning coffee time, and I'm going to talk about, gosh, deja vu. I'm deja vuing the heck out of this morning. Weird. Who knows what it really is? Maybe we've been here before. I'm doing this video basically because I can. Some of you may be getting tired of seeing this, but you know, I think about it in a way that we all should think about our projects, our special projects, our projects of interest, is that this currently, in my mind, is the greatest thing in the world. All our projects should be that way. All the care, the meticulous eye towards detail that we put into things, that's how you achieve your goals, basically. When you concentrate, use all the tools in your arsenal: patience, precision, timing. I have to say though, I am very impatient. If you're of my age, my ilk, 50s, 60s, 70s even, you remember when there was a time that there were hobby shops, local hobby shops. People used to build stuff. They didn't just go to Amazon and buy an airplane already built. You could drive and you could pick up the parts and pieces to build something, because people did stuff like this. They did stuff with their hands. I've talked about slide rules in the past. I miss those days. Everything needs to be instant. Generalization, because it's not just us older folks that use our hands. There's a lot of younger people getting into this stuff, luckily, in spite of civilization. I just realized that this stuff is SIG, dope products, including dope thinner. This is a collector's item. SIG no longer makes this stuff. I bought my dope thinner online because I had to. There's no hobby shops locally. And the fellow called me back. Great customer service. Eugene Toys and Hobbies in Eugene, Oregon. And asked me, does it matter that the can is dented for the dope thinner? And I'm like, no. I'm not buying it for the can. The can is just what carries the important stuff. And he said that they don't make it anymore, and it's a collector's item, and wanted to know if I still wanted it. It's like, dude, I want the dope thinner. I'm not into that whole idea of having something cool and not using it. And so, my friends, my YouTube friends, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, because I can't put the dope onto the big surfaces, the coats of dope, 4 to 6 coats. Can't do the fancy trim work with my red tissue paper left over from the Pete and Pole Air Camper. I'm going to probably do it in a sleek streak pattern with the tips red and kind of this wiggly little thing. Write something on the wings. Fancy stuff on the back end. Gotta wait. At least the motor is coming tomorrow. Lineage. I think about lineage. Don't just think about the thing in its application, but think about where it came from, the people that designed it. Carl Goldberg Viking. In the 1960 Nats, the national competition of free flight, probably control line 2, hand launch gliders, the whole enchilada, the Viking swept the 1960 Nats in free flight. This was an amazing plane. It still is. In 1961, in Pennsylvania, look at this, I'm very continental in my pronunciations, Pennsylvania, 1961 Nats. A fellow launched his Carl Goldberg high thrust Viking, shoo, shot up about noon, there and abouts. Didn't come back to Earth until 7:30 in the evening. And so, why do you need the carbon fiber, the myriad of high-tech gadgetry for your free flight planes, when this 1960 something technology, wood and paper, how more organic does it get than that, can still max? How they work: limited motor run, 7-9 seconds, a mere 7-9 seconds. Shoo, zooms up 600 feet or so, hits a thermal, circles around, back end pops up, comes down before you lose it. When Carl Goldberg started out his career in model airplanes, him and his pappy used to launch these things skyward, Hop in the car, and young Carl's instructions were don't take your eye off the plane, because they would just chase it. They were like balloon chasers. You could do that back in the day. Oh, what we have lost, my friends. Carl came up with putting hedrals all over the wing. Prior to Carl, it was just the V dihedral, and Carl came up with the model use of polyhedral. Helped. He also designed a thing, the FAI. I can never remember what the F is. It's a French word. The A is aeronautic, however you pronounce it, with a glass of wine because it's French. And the I is international. F, Aeronautic International. Well, anyway, the FAI Viking used a 15.15 cubic inch engine, and Carl came up with adding up thrust, because the thing is, we're talking lineage, and I'm going to get deeper into that personally. The greatest source of drag on an airplane, you normally have to use down thrust or else it'll loop, is this wing. It's like a parachute, it drags. So he was like, having up thrust in the engine, giving the wing a little negative incidence, a lot less drag, zoom. Then of course his fantastic design of the Viking series speeds up in bad air, slows down in good air, the rising thermals. And so the point is to get this thing as high as possible, and his contemporaries were like, Carl, you're insane, you can't have up thrust, it'll just loop. But the thing, rocket skyward. Lineage, you have to think about everything. You pluck the strand of the spider web, all those spiders are thrown off because the whole thing reverberates. Reverberate, today's vocabulary word. Roberto, you'll have an easy time using reverberates. You're a guitar player, banjo player, everything player, so it can fit nicely into your scheme of life. I'm thinking, you know, whenever I make a video, why do I do it? I'm blameless. I went down to visit the family. We had, you know what happened. I'm not going to dwell on that. We're not dwellers in my family. We celebrate the life. We don't cringe at the end. You know, you do your best job. Remembrance, don't dwell. My grandpa, Ardif, his family came from Wales. And the story was, don't quote me on this, they came over from Wales because there was things happening as far as Welsh nationalism. They were basically thrown out. And my dad remembers as a lad going to visit the family that was kicked out. And he said they refused to speak English. They spoke Cymraeg, chain smoked, and bitched about the English. Pardon my rough language. Ardif, my grandfather, never met him. He died relatively early in his 40s from a brain tumor. My dad had all these great things that were squirreled away that Ardif, he was a writer, he was a thinker, he was into politics, and was known to like take up the opposite just to start arguments and then step back and let everyone else fight, and then just was entertained by it. But he wrote, he was a prolific writer. He wrote articles that he would submit to magazines. We have copies of these. And he also wrote a novel, an interesting novel. And so that is my reason for doing YouTube videos. My grandpa Ardif, who I never met, things tend to skip generations in our family. I have a lot of my father's traits, but I'm not like him. My son Max is more like my father than I am. Apparently, skipping generations, in that respect, I'm like my grandpa Ardif, who I never met. Genetics. On the other hand, my mom's father, Eladio Reyes Valodovinas, and you can tell he's not from Wales, he came to the U.S. around 1910, walked here. His mom was like, get out, because they're making Indians work in the mines. It wasn't a very pleasant situation, so he walked to Denver from the southern reaches of Mexico and worked on the railroads. Now this is important. My YouTube-ness, I believe, came from my grandpa Ardif, a rabble-rouser, you know. Why did I get into the flat earth thing, probably from that. I'm being channeled. On the other hand, my grandpa Eladio, Grandpa High, was a laborer, worked on the railroads, pounding spikes. He was a responsible, hard-working dude, and so he was promoted to being hung from trestles and pounding rivets. He was just that kind of a guy. Worked with the CCCs building state park structures in Wisconsin, built fences. I like fences. But he was an interesting fellow in that he felt pride in what he built, working hard. Studied the Mackinac Bridge. It was great when he visited Michigan in his later years because he wanted to see the Mackinac Bridge. He knew how many rivets was in it. He knew all the things. He studied it, taught himself how to read. I have his typewriter in the pole barn. Interesting guy. And what I remember about him, aside from he was a smoker, so he died young. He died when he was about 96. Died healthy. In the rest home, he managed, hand-done, a 3-acre garden. You know, so he was a powerhouse. I remember big barrel chest from years of hard work and a smile. I never saw the dude, even though he had a rough life, lots of kids, very responsible, I never saw him unhappy. He enjoyed hard work. And I'm sure Grandpa High, if you're watching me now, would really dig my wheelbarrow. Johnny, that's a great wheelbarrow, you know? And so I enjoy lineages and where we come from, where our things come from, where our bows come from, where we come from. So in that way, I celebrate my heritage. I also have German mixed into it, and that's probably why I love sour things and German potato salad. And in all deference to the German side, I'm just being kind of a goof here. I do have a lot of pride in that too, the Germanic people. That's kind of the pudding that holds all the raisins and stuff together in who I am. Nuts and raisins, yeah. And so there it is. As soon as I get this thing doped, as soon as I can balance it, I have no idea, you know, the weight of an electric motor. I'm not an electric motor guy. You know, I shall investigate. I shall be able to actually video this thing. The test glides, I guarantee this thing is going to glide like nobody's business. And also powered radio-controlled flights. I need to admit something to you. I have a confession. It's a deep, dark confession. I went on the eBay, and I found an unopened, and you can do some research here, Playboy Senior. It's an airplane. I think it came about in the 30s. I forget. There's too many numbers to remember. But this is an unopened kit, a vintage free flight kit, and it looks more like an airplane because it has wheels and everything. It has the pylon like this one does. Unopened on eBay. I only paid $51 for it. I suppose if I'm going to have a midlife crisis, which I don't think I am, that's a good way to do it. Is buying a few vintage airplane kits. That's all right. Well, everyone, have a marvelous day. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for being my YouTube friends. And today's question, aside from the vocabulary word, is if you had something useful that was considered a collector's item, would you use it or would you just let it collect dust on a shelf somewhere? I don't want to sway you. I would use it. Gosh, especially if it was like a 1967 Bonneville. If it was a 1969 Trans Am, or a Plymouth Belvedere, I'd use the heck out of it. I'd wash it once in a while, unlike stuff I have now, the modern stuff. But I would use it. I would. I'm going to open that box so fast on that Playboy Senior, build that sucker, your head's going to spin. Coffee time. Oh, the beauty shot. This thing is so cool. And I never really connected it. Rob, you know, when you said that it would be something like Leonardo da Vinci would design, that really made me wonder whether or not I want to decorate this thing with colored tissue, or just keep it simple so the structure itself is what you're looking at. Why disguise the structure, the ribs, the spars, the trailing edges, blah, 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 on and on, with color? Doesn't need distraction. This thing is really nice the way it is. We're done now.